So this video will cover work related to completing drawing 9 in AutoCAD for DT23. We originally were given a worksheet 7 where we solved by hand the ortho faces from the given isometric pictorials. Then in drawing 8, we did the same ortho views, but this time they were done in AutoCAD using AutoCAD layers and drawing tools. And then we went over into SketchUp and we brought in the 3D views that we produced in SketchUp that were printed in an isometric layout, but were actually drawn in 3D. And so now we're just going to do all 4 of the same worksheet, 7 objects. We're just going to do them all isometrically in AutoCAD. And when we get done, they'll actually look like these little drawings that, that were originally given with the worksheet. So to start with, I want to create an axis for the isometric work. And so I'm going to put on my projector layer, and I'm also going to turn on isometric. And before you do isometric, check out your grid snap settings here. Make sure they're at 0.25, so they go with the grids on the sheet for 4 grids per major line. That'll help them work out better in when we're drawing. And then turn on your isometric, and you'll see I already registered these other 3 so that the axis of my projector lines are right on an iso grid. I didn't do that when I was in the rectangular mode. I'm doing that when I'm in isometric. And to do that, just make sure your grid is on and be on your projector layer, and then just do a line. And you can just pick a point that you think is a good starting point, but I like to use a grid at this point to do that starting click, right? Just to get that first point on. Then turn that grid off, and now just use your polar tracker. So now we want it to be a perfect 90 straight up in the box. And then we'll do another, and we'll just make sure we're getting that end point. And then pulling over on our polar. But we keep it in the box. So it's on the polar, in the box, but we want to make sure that we get it down to this angle, 30. So that's our isometric angles, and then this last one is at 150. So that's how we get the little projector grid on there, and we can switch over to visible. Still got our little ISO tool going, and we're going to start with object 1. Object 1 has on the face 4 units across, 4 units tall, and 4 units or 2 units deep. Since each grid is 0.25, I can start a line here and I can either use the grids or I can use the distance. And if I zoom in, I can see these small grids. So I can go, oh, it's 4 grids, or I could just put the grid snap on here and use that. So it's 4 by 4 on the face, and it's 2 grids or 0.25, 0.5 on the depth. And that gives you that box. Now, if you want to see the whole box, just fill in a few more edges so that you can see the box. So that's the boundary of A. And now we're just going to start slicing away at it until we have what we need to be remaining. And I'm just going to start with the top view up here. I would turn the grid off here. And make sure that you have both your snap tracking on and your snaps on. Have both of those on. And then that way you can use reference points to get things to line up. And I'm going to start the line command here. but I'm referencing that beginning point, and then I'm saying, you know, I want to start the line, it'll be half a grid, so 0.125 away from that corner. And then I want to come down on my polar angle of 30 degrees or 330, one grid, so that's 0.25. And then back over here. Now I could be very careful and get the snap, and I see that's the correct length, 0.125. So that's that little notch. So we can actually copy those verticals, because the vertical would be the same length. And just get rid of that one. And we can just trim up here. So now we have that. And we can actually copy that down to here. And we see that we have to trim a little bit more right there. And this is hidden, so we don't show hidden in these types of isometrics. And we'll do one more trim, get that edge there. So that's that corner with the slot running down the face, right? Running down the whole face. And then we have these two foreshortened slopes. And the top one starts 2 grids from this corner, so it's 0.5 where it starts, and well, it will be, you have to have an end point for it, and it will be, because it's going over 2 and down 2, it's going to have to be on the midpoint of that vertical line. So, and just to check, right, 0.5, and this one is also 0.5, which is two grids. So now I can copy that line. That's not, that line is not parallel to any axis, and so it can only be drawn correctly if we know the x and y coordinates of the endpoints. So those are the tricky ones to solve. And you can see I'm just cleaning up all these extra lines. And now I have a visible edge right here. Before this comes, this other foreshortened slope comes back. I have one little mistake right there. I need another visible edge right there for that whole foreshortened slope on the top. And then this one, it starts 1 grid in this way, so 0.25 and the endpoint. And then we have to kind of do the same thing. We have to get rid of this and trim that. Then we can copy, make sure you get your endpoints. Yeah, we'll just close that off. Or we could have copied the other side. As long as you're snapping carefully, then you'll be good. So that's the object. Now the instructions want you to center the drawn object inside the frame. I already drew these frames as rectangles, so they're polylines, and polylines have that geometric snap that we can use. So I'm going to just turn off the ISO now, and I'm going to draw on my frame layer. I'm going to draw a rectangle, and I'm using my reference points. So I'm using the lower left, and then I'm getting the uppermost right. And we can just get rid of our little projectors. We don't need those. And then we can do, now make sure we got our snapping, so no grid on, and then we're going to take off our usual snaps and just leave on that geometric center snap. And now I want to use my move command, which is up here on the modify panel, And I'm going to move everything that I box, and then I'm hitting the space bar to end the picking for the selection group. And now it wants to know the base point, and I'm hovering on the small rectangle until I see that green circle with the asterisk in the middle. That means that the geometric center snap is ready to click. So I'm just going to click right there. And now I'm holding on to my object using its geometric center, and I'm going to hover over the other rectangle, the outer rectangle, the frame, until I see its geometric center ready to snap, and then I'm just going to snap. And there we have. We've just centered the whole object, and just take that little extra frame off. You're ready to go. Back to visible. And we can just start. We can just start another one. We'll just start B. So B has this little cutout on the edge. It makes it maybe a little hard to start with this face. And so for this one, why don't I start with the 2 by 6 rectangle on the bottom. So just using lines, and now we have to go back to sort of normal snap mode, right? Start a line right here, and it's going to be the length, which is 6, so that's 1.5, and have the height of 1, 2, 3, 4, so that's 1, and then we have the depth going back at, make sure your snap is right there. Our distance back is 2 grids, so 0.5. And then you can kind of use that as a starting point. So this is going to go over 0.5, and then there would be a line here, and a line here, and we can copy. Make sure you get your snaps. Grid snap on. Oh, I know what's going on. I don't have my ISO on. Oh. You don't really need ISO if you're using your axis. ISO does make it nice. So there's my little box, and these will be confusing to look at, so we'll take those off right away. So there's my sort of my isometric outer boundary of my shape, and so now I'm going to chisel away at it, and I don't like that that is covering my visible line, so we'll send it to the back. I think I can do away with those now that we have our box. Our drawing's a little crisper on the screen, and so we'll just cut this notch in that's one grid high, and so again, it's hovering there, not clicking, giving it an offset distance of 0.25, 1 grid. And then I'm going up along the axis 0.5, and then down should be 0.25 to get that. And now we can copy or move or draw that. Might not be able to see all that, but that's, oops, trim. Sometimes it's easier to do this as we go along because your eye starts seeing it. And so then this disappears.